Welcome to TrulyFit.
All right, welcome back to the TrulyFit Podcast. Beck, thanks for doing this again. This is kind of round 2 here of the new format where we run down a list of trending topics in the health and fitness and nutrition world, and we talk about them. Sometimes there'll be arguments, sometimes we'll just discuss them as is, and a little bit different format than the typical interview format, but thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, this should be fun. I'm excited about today's topics. Before we jump in, we have to address the elephant in the room. What's going on with your face?
I have a Band-Aid on my face underneath my eyeball. For those who are not watching on YouTube and listening, I am not bringing Nelly's style back. If you even remember who Nelly is, where he wore a Band-Aid on his face.
You're dating yourself.
I'm dating myself for sure. I wonder how old Nelly is. He's probably 48 years old now or something. But I just had some little skin lesion thing. Went to the dermatologist. They froze it off, and it looks worse than it is. So I have a Band-Aid on my face covering it up.
Yeah, and to build off of that public service announcement, go get your skin cancer checks. I live in Miami, so I get them every 6 months. You're in Texas. I'm hoping you're getting them every 6 months, but it's important. Yeah.
I had something on my ear, which they call some derm jargon that I forget, some sort of keratosis. So I get that checked every once in a while because, if it grows, if it changes, although it's not cancerous now, that doesn't mean it can't turn cancerous. So always good to get checked. Topic number 1 today, using a gym bag. Is it too much? Are you impartial to it? Do you use a gym bag when you go to the gym? What do you think about people who have gym bags? And maybe we should even add to this, because more so than the gym bag now is people bringing their tripods and phones to the gym. So it's like gym equipment.
Well, not gym equipment, photography equipment, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I love the idea of a gym bag. One, because if you're bringing a gym bag, it means you've made plans to go to the gym, right? You're not waiting to the last minute. You're like packing your bag the night before. You're thinking about what you need. So I like the idea of, for people who are just getting started, right? Going to the gym. It's nice to be able to plan ahead to really, to know what you have with you. And then also you can plan for how long to stay, right? So if you need a snack, if you need a water, if you need an electrolyte drink, you can have all that in the bag. And I think it allows you to stay longer rather than thinking like, I have to go home to get X, Y, or Z. So I am pro gym bag.
Yeah. And I'll say, however contradictory this sounds, it allows you to plan and not plan, because what it also allows you to do is bring a bunch of stuff dependent upon which workout you're going to choose. And then you can decide when you get to the gym. So let me unpack that. I get to the gym and I planned on doing something on the Smith machine, and it's being used. So my backup plan is now to kickbox. Luckily, I have a gym bag, so I can just put on my boxing gloves because I brought my boxing gloves, right? So
you can pivot,
So you can pivot if you have all the things that you need. Maybe you have wrist straps because you do a heavy Olympic lifting. You weren't planning on doing it that day, but you felt better once you warmed up, and now you want to do your heavy Olympic lifting. Well, now you have your wrist straps in your bag. So I do think it is good to have a gym bag and be prepared with all of the potentials that you're going to use. Now, moving on to the other subject, I don't think it's good to be in the gym filming yourself all the time and having a tripod. And now you'll start noticing people who get kicked out of the gym. There's all these TikTok videos, people getting kicked out of the gym and no tripods in the gym. And they go why am I even working out now?
What is the point if I can't put it on social media? I feel like I go to the gym to have time to myself, to have peace, to have time away from my phone, to have time away from friends and social media. So, I'm not someone at the gym who likes to chat and hang out and catch up. I am there for me and I want to get in the zone. So when I see people doing that type of stuff, I think it's distracting. And also you don't want to be in the back of someone's video, or, if you are new to the gym and you're kind of self-conscious, right? There are still machines that I'm self-conscious on. I don't really know how they work. And if I see someone filming, and maybe they're not even filming me, but I think it's going to make me more nervous about it. So I don't like it.
Yeah, I agree.
You're someone that brings your phone. I see you kickboxing and stuff, right? You record yourself doing that, but you always make sure there's nobody around.
Yeah, and very rarely, if you look at the percentages and the time I spend in the gym to the time that's being recorded, for me, it was almost a must because of what I do in my industry. It's okay, I have to record some videos here and there.
100%, that makes sense. Yeah.
I work out probably 5 days a week. Of the 7 days, I do something, and maybe once a month I'll record 40 seconds of something, put it up there.
I've never seen anyone in your background. It always seems like you found a little space or a nook and it's just you.
No one's in the background. It's I make sure it's just me. It's at times when the gym is not at a quote unquote high time. It's at a low time, and yeah, it's not like performative either, if that makes sense. Like that's just the workout I'm doing, and I just record a little bit of it. Whereas for other people, it seems so performative, and I get it. Sometimes it's part of your brand and your mission, and you believe that, hey, I this is how I'm going to get money. I need to show people not only what I look like, but what I do, because if I'm good at this, then other people will ask me, well, how do I get good at this? And they will hire me. I get that. But there has to be a line. You have to draw a line somewhere between, number one, enjoying your workout, you respecting the gym and the other people's time. And if you really want to make this your business model, well, then build a gym in your house.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to, respecting the other people there, because, seeing workouts online does inspire people, right? You see somebody doing a workout, you're like, I'm going to try that machine, or I'm going to try these lifts, or look at what she's doing, look at what he's doing. So I appreciate that. But yeah, you need to do it in your own time. Get to the gym super early, stay super late. You shouldn't be making other people uncomfortable.
I do wonder, though, how much to play devil's advocate, how much is inspiring versus actually deflating. And I don't know this for a fact, but how many people look at some of these videos and look at these people? Well, we know a lot of people do, because we know now that the mental health rates and suicide rates of teenage girls and these sorts of things are up. It's like, how many people are actually doing it because they believe they're helping others in this altruistic fashion, or because they just want to pump up their own ego and then pretend it's some business and marketing thing?
But at least they're showing that they're putting in the work, right? So I remember when Victoria's Secret used to be a big deal, right? The Victoria's Secret fashion show, they'd interview the models. They'd be like, so what do you do? How do you get in shape? Like, oh, I walk. I'll jog. You know what I mean? Like they said, oh, I love to eat pizza. I love to eat burgers. No, you don't. Like, you absolutely don't look like that and do that kind of stuff. So I do appreciate saying, like, hey, if you want to look like this is the type of work you have to put in, right? They're not saying this is natural, or I get this just by sitting on the couch. Like, you have to work.
Yeah. On to the next topic, because I'm sure we can beat that topic to death. Somatic exercise. I know that you don't really know what that is totally. It's something that is on my radar a lot, because it's just, I guess you would say it's a niche that is up and coming, and it's a little bit annoying. And I'm going to tell you why. So first, somatic exercise, soma comes from the Greek word like relating to the body or of the body, which kind of doesn't make sense, because all exercise is relating to the body. So you have somatic exercise, right? You have exercise that doesn't relate to the body, but what they really mean is like mindfulness. And I'm all about that, right? Being mindful, being in tune with your body. Meditation is great. I have a few apps that I used to use. I don't do it as often. Sam Harris's app specifically is the one that I enjoyed the most, waking up. And I guess the issue lies in, they take it a step too far sometimes. So instead of just saying, okay, somatic exercise could be something like when you're in a yoga class and they go, oh, wiggle your toes when you start a class, like feel your toes in space, like whatever. Okay. It's like mind body connection. You're feeling your body. You're understanding your body. I do think the yogis feel like they have this like unique experience with understanding their body better than other people, which is just not the case. So like from all the people I work with, the people who understand their body the best are actually bodybuilders, because they have to isolate specific muscles so much to get them to look a particular way that they're so in tune with their body, right? So it's like, oh, unless I have the perfect VMO, vastus medialis, it's like it's one of the muscles like in your thigh, then I'm not going to win on stage. So I have to make sure that I'm like working that muscle more. So they really know how to like contract muscles. Yeah. But anyway, so now they're the somatic exercise people, who are typically just people with like a low-level certification or yoga certification, are talking about like trauma healing and like helping women through menopause and doing all these things. And I feel like it's a slap in the face to people who really do that stuff. To people who have their PhDs and spend 10,000 hours like working with people one-on-one. And for you to come in, it's great that you're trying to help people, but claim that through, your breath work and your sort of yoga-esque techniques, you're going to help somebody through trauma seems to be, over the top.
I know you hate the woo-woo stuff, so this is where we differ. I think, you won't find a ton of literature on this, but it's like we have to start somewhere, right? Like someone has to come up with the theory, and then we have to put the clinical trials in place to prove it. But there's a couple studies that talk about, we carry, the theory is we carry our trauma in our body, right? So like if you go through something really, really stressful, there's a mind-body connection, you carry it in your body. And so some examples of this is like, sometimes if you're getting a massage, some people just might cry, right? You hit like a certain part of your fascia and you're like, oh, you're overcome with emotion, right? There's this idea that your emotions aren't just stored in your brain, they're in your body. I know you hate that. And I think as long as people aren't like guaranteeing results, right? If you're like, hey, do you want to try breath work? Now, breath work has been around for centuries, right? Like breath work and yoga. And so there is a lot of evidence behind that. But I understand there are some of these new modalities that's like, okay, if you lie here and we do some sound meditation and, wiggle your toes, you're going to be healed. No, I think
I agree with you. My hesitation is when these sort of guru type people combine all of the things and then tell you they're going to fix something rather than just being good at one thing, right? So if you're a breathwork person, great.
Yeah.
If you're somebody who works on meditation, great. If you're someone who works on mindfulness, great. If you're someone who works on, fascia of the body, great. But when you pretend to have an expertise in all of these things and then you can fix all these things and help people out, it starts to get into that sort of like guru-esque area to me that just gets a little bit too woo-woo. It's like there's no way that you spent enough time to like be an expert in all these areas.
No, and I'm not a fan of anyone practicing out of scope, right? So I don't want my trainer to try to show me how to meditate. I don't want my, the person that helps me meditate to show me how to do a squat, right? It's like practice within your scope. You shouldn't be teaching things that you're not qualified to teach because ultimately someone's going to get hurt. You're not going to do it right,
Touche. On to the next topic. You want to introduce this one?
Yeah. So should your trainer and your dietitian be in great shape?
You want to go first?
I think we're going to get a lot of hate for this one.
I did a podcast on this, actually sort of siding with the side you probably don't think I'm going to side with.
Interesting. Okay. Yes, I 100% think your dietitian and your trainer should be in good shape. In the same way where you wouldn't work with an investment broker that's flat broke, right? You want somebody to be walking the walk. You want them to know that they believe in what they're selling. You also want to be inspired by them, right? You want to look at your trainer and say, wow, I'd love to have abs like that. I'd love my calves to look like that. You want to look at your dietitian and say, oh, she's eating salads, right? I remember you told me the gym you used to work at, there was like a dietitian who was significantly overweight. And then when you go in her office, she's like eating snacks all day. And it's like, well, why would I want to work with this person? Because I think in our industry, it's about more than knowledge, right? I think you can find anything you want to know on the internet for free. So it's like the benefit of working with us is it's also the coaching behind it and it's taking knowledge and putting it into action. And so you want to see that the person that you're working with has done that too and has been successful.
Yes. I agree to some extent, but I don't think that one, if we're doing an equation here, you being in good shape, and plus B, you having some knowledge, means that you're automatically the person to go to. And let me kind of unpack that. That might have not made sense, but there are so many people who are in very good shape who, this is a term that Jim Harbaugh just used, actually, which is really funny, who were born on third base and thought they hit a triple. Do you understand what that means?
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
You didn't do the work, right? You're just, you're 18 years old. You're in very good shape already. That doesn't mean you have better knowledge than the 68-year-old trainer who maybe used to be in good shape, but now they have kids and they have grandkids. And to be a trainer, typically you have to be a good trainer, I should say. At some point in your life, you've done group fitness. And group fitness will really wear on your body. If you want to start making money, you want to teach 3 spin classes a day, and then you go teach Zumba class or something, you are wearing out your body, unfortunately. And not to say that that's great. As a trainer, you should also recognize that and not do that. But you might have a knee issue. You might have an ankle issue. And you might be a little bit overweight. That 68-year-old that's accrued 40 years of knowledge is going to know more than the 18-year-old who's in good shape. So I do think there are some caveats to this.
Exceptions,
There is a difference between a trainer being extremely out of shape, but I do think when you get to a certain age, that naturally it's harder to stay in great shape at a certain age, right? You can't compare what a 48-year-old looks like and an 18-year-old looks like. The 48-year-old might not have abs. That doesn't mean he doesn't know better ab exercises than the 18-year-old.
No, I get that. Yeah. And if you think about, you make a good point, because if you think about the top athletes, right? Like Michael Jordan, Serena Williams, their coaches aren't top athletes, right? Like Michael Jordan's coach, like personal coach, wasn't the best basketball player of all time. He couldn't be, right? Because that was Michael Jordan. So
no, and if you look at that, Beck, there's actually almost like an inverse relation between the best coaches usually played, but they were never good. And the sort of the speculation is because they had to do all of the things and learn all of the things to even be good enough to make the team, which makes them a better, more well-rounded person who can not only relate with more players, but understands all the nuances. Where if you're born on third and thought you had a triple, like let's take Mike Singletary for example. He's one of the best linebackers of all time. He was a terrible head coach because he didn't understand why his players couldn't make the plays. It's like, well, why aren't you making that play? It's like, well, because not everyone's as gifted as you are, right? You have to scheme things up based upon your players. And I do think that comes with a trainer and a nutritionist. So maybe with a nutritionist, it's almost better that at some point you didn't look great. You weren't in great shape.
For sure.
And then you got there and you maintained it.
Yeah. And that's my story. There's this saying, that you can best help people out of a well you've already been down, right? So if you were overweight and then you found your way back and got in shape, you're going to be able to help other overweight people do the same thing. Similarly, right? If you were the worst person on the football team and then you became Tom Brady, like maybe Tom Brady would be an excellent coach. I don't know. So I think, not everyone is a good teacher. But I do personally, if I'm going to work with someone, I want to be inspired by them. And I don't mean you have to have washboard perfect abs, but I can't look at you and think you're out of shape. Yeah, that's not going to inspire me at the gym. I want to, I think there's probably like a middle ground, Yeah.
And I think for like, let's say a physical therapist, it probably wouldn't be a big deal because of the fact that you're much more technical in helping somebody out for a short amount of time, and you're just looking at the anatomical features, whereas in almost everybody who comes to a trainer at some point in their journey, it's usually the first juncture of the meeting, is looking at some kind of vanity change.
Sure.
Even if they have an injury, they'll always add in like, hey, I just got over a knee replacement, so I want to start to strengthen my quad and work on my knee, but I also am gaining some weight around my midsection. Would love to lose 4 pounds. Right? There's always kind of some sort of vanity goal in conjunction with maybe another goal when you're coming to a personal trainer. Whereas as a physical therapist, it's not the case. Sometimes you're just going there for a short period of time to rehab something, and that's fine. So if a trainer wants to be more of a corrective exercise specialist, maybe they're helping an older population. But as a general rule, right, if you're just a general trainer or general nutritionist helping everybody out, you're gonna have to walk the walk, and if you talk the talk, or else you're just not going to get clients.
For sure. And there's a whole body positive movement, healthy at every size, and I struggle with that. In that, I think you can strive for health at any size. And I think it's great that we're making, mannequins at the store that represent the population, and we're making workout clothes that fit everyone. That's great. But I don't think you can say healthy at every size, because then that doesn't encourage people to get in shape, right? If you can say, I'm already healthy, this is it, I don't need to lose weight. And, generally speaking, from all of the clients that I've worked with, if you look at someone who's overweight or obese and you look at their labs, I think the number on the scale is one very small data point. That's not, and it's not the most important. But if you compare their labs, they're usually unhealthy, right? They're less healthy than someone who is of normal weight. So, BMI is also not a good marker, but there are specific labs you can look at. You can look at body fat percentage and muscle mass. There's specific things you can do. And it's not natural to be obese, right? It's unhealthy for our heart. It's unhealthy for our organs. You accumulate more toxins because your fat cells grow so large. So, I think we need to focus on striving for health at every size, recognizing that it's not the people's fault. In the same way where if someone got diabetes, you wouldn't say like, well, that's your fault. You'd say like, oh, okay, how can we help you? And that needs to be the same mentality. Like it's an illness. Obesity is an illness, and we need to stop blaming people, but help them, take accountability in a way that encourages them to make some changes and get the help they need.
Yeah, I think that's tough in this environment only because what ends up happening is you have these communities and everyone's fighting online because you can't see facial cues and mannerisms. And then people start saying things like healthy at every size. And they feel like they're speaking it into existence. Like, oh, if I say it, it's true. It's like, that's not how life works. Right? You can't just say something and it be true. You have to then argue for it like we're doing here, right? We have to talk about it and expand on the topic. And there's so many of these people who say, it doesn't matter. People call Doritos a junk food. It's not a junk food. It's like, yeah, it is a junk food, right?
Of course
like
it is.
So I think people are more and more inclined to just say, oh, if I speak something out loud and I say it forcefully, then it's true. And then you have all this body positivity. It's like, listen, we have metrics. We can look at labs, like you just said. We have particular metrics.
Show me someone who's overweight or obese and show me their inflammatory markers, show me their cholesterol, and show me their blood pressure. I guarantee it's not in the healthy range.
And if it is, then good for you. Then you are healthy at any size. But that's not most. Yeah, you're the exception. And to focus on the size rather than those numbers seems wrong from both angles. From our angle, to say that, and from their angle to say, hey, you can be healthy at any size. It's like, well, you can be, but are you trying to be? You doing, like, I always see this, like, you being 300 pounds and doing Pilates twice a week does not mean you're healthy. Like, you're more limber than usual, but you're not healthy. You're not helping your heart health by sitting on a reformer. Sorry to say. So that's a lot of the industry that I see now. For
sure. Yeah. There's definitely two different groups, and it's hard because there is so much back and forth that the science gets overlooked, right? And we have to go back to the science. Let's look at people's lab values. The correlation is if you're significantly overweight or obese, your lab values are going to indicate that you have some health concerns.
But it's leaking into the medical system. Even my wife, who's a physician, has to sit through like nonsense, like credentialing CEU stuff and talks when people come in and say like, hey, we need to be more, body positive, and here are all the, metrics and stats about why people are actually healthy at larger sizes in larger bodies. And the terminology, we can't call people obese. They're dealing with obesity. They have this disease, as opposed to them like being obese and, acquiring this. It's like having cancer.
Doctors can't talk to their patients anymore, right? Doctors can't talk to their patients about losing weight. And I think we're in a bad situation because 70% of the population is overweight or obese, and it's bankrupting our medical system. So yeah, something needs to be done.
Not to mention why it's so important at a young age. Kayla has all the stats, my wife, about, if you're obese at a certain age, the likelihood of you staying obese is like tenfold, right? Whatever it is, right? If you're obese at 6, the chances of you being obese at 26 is going to be like 10 times higher. So it's very important that we have these conversations with kids and let their pediatricians handle this.
For sure. And, there was some misinformation that came out from someone, I want to even say like the Surgeon General, right? Someone who should not have said this, but basically came out and said, obesity is genetic. And so everyone's like, great, obesity is genetic, not my fault, can't do anything about it. No, there are components, right? There are small components that have, where there's a genetic factor. But generally speaking, the reason why if your parents are obese, you're more likely to be obese is because you're following in their footsteps. You're following in their habits. If they have Doritos for dinner, you have Doritos for dinner. If they sit down and watch TV for 8 hours, then you sit down, right? It's like, it's the habits that you create. It's the fact that you're in the same household. It doesn't have to do with sharing genes.
Touche. Couldn't agree more. Next topic here. Why is Topo Chico so damn good? I woke up this morning. I was very upset. I went to my fridge and I was out of Topo Chico. Instead, I'm drinking a Spindrift, which is my second favorite seltzer. It's a little bit different. Obviously, Spindrift, we've had this conversation before in another podcast because it's one of the only sparkling waters that doesn't use quote unquote natural flavors. Yeah. So I drink more Spindrift than anything else, but Topo Chico is certainly my go-to. Why is it better than everything else? And do you agree with that?
100%. Yes. I actually don't buy it as often because it's expensive, right? I don't know what it is in Texas. In Miami, it's pretty expensive, but
cheaper in Texas because they get it.
They
from
make it
Mexico.
in Mexico. Okay. Yeah. So let's break it down. So one, Topo Chico is a mineral water. It's a sparkling mineral water, meaning that it comes from a natural source. So it can come from a natural spring. In this case, Topo Chico comes from an inactive volcano in Mexico. So they bottle it there. And so mineral waters are going to have different tastes because they have minerals in it, right? As opposed to like Dasani or Aquafina, if you've tasted Fiji or Evian, the taste is different because they have natural minerals that are in the ground that get absorbed into the water. So Topo Chico has its own special like recipe, right, so to speak, from this volcano of minerals that makes it, you know, super specific. Some people say it tastes a little bit salty. I even think it tastes citrusy. So it's interesting, but it's definitely unique.
Yeah, I think it's more bubbly. I don't know if they add extra carbonation to it or if it's just naturally more carbonated than other beverages. I don't know how that works. They
only add back the carbonation that is lost in the bottling process. So it's supposed to be, you know, as close to what you find in nature as possible.
I think it's more bubbly or in some respects, like how the bubbles work, how the fizz is.
The size of the bubbles matters too. Yeah, some have big bubbles, some have tiny bubbles.
I feel like this is just a pure guess. There's like way more tiny bubbles. Like that's what it feels like in my mouth. And it's just like, it's a good, like oral feeling. And then in addition to that, the taste is better. It's cleaner. A lot of the seltzers I have, obviously they have really fake tastes where they almost like dry me out. I'm like, is this hydrating me or is this like dehydrating me?
Well, no, because you need electrolytes to be hydrated, right? And so some of these other, whether it's sparkling water or normal water, if it's distilled to the point where it doesn't have any minerals in it, that's not good. You want those minerals. You need those electrolytes in order to really hydrate. Like that's why Gatorade works. That's why all these electrolyte supplements work. So you can really feel good. But I think the other component is how it's packaged. So I've only seen Topo Chico in glass bottles. You too, or do they sell it in the can?
Not in a can. They do have it in plastic bottles, but I don't buy it in plastic bottles. I buy it in glass bottles.
You buy it in the glass bottles. And so there's a difference in the packaging, right? There's a difference between glass and aluminum. So when I was in the pharmaceutical industry, on all of the drugs that were coming out in order to be commercially approved, right, and go to market, they had to do this testing called extractables and leachables testing. So they're testing to see whether the container, portions of the container, can leach into the liquid, right? So if you're someone who's taking like Humira, right, they want to make sure like the syringe isn't, little pieces of the syringe aren't getting into the medications. They have to do that testing. We don't do that with food. And so our packaging, you know, you don't know how things are being stored. If something is on a truck from California to New York, what is the temperature? What does that look like? The packaging can actually leach into our food. And so
when you say can, I assume it does more often than not.
Absolutely. It does. And they've only done, you know, a handful of studies on it, but yeah, they've proven that plastic is leaching into water and that aluminum is actually leaching into the water. And so glass is much safer. Aluminum is also a neurotoxin. And so they found that when they look at people with Alzheimer's and they've done the postmortem autopsies, they have higher levels of aluminum in their blood. And so some of that is in their blood and in their body, in their tissues. Some of that is like, okay, aluminum deodorant, right? There's lots of sources of aluminum in our daily lives, but why would you add more with the sparkling water, right? And you have to assume like the pH of the sparkling water is different than normal water. If it's in there long enough under certain temperatures, maybe it's corrosive and that aluminum is leaching into the sparkling water. I haven't been able to find any studies on that. I have a feeling that there, you know, are people high up at Coca-Cola probably preventing these studies because the glass bottles are more expensive. But I think that adds to it too, because even when I was younger and I used to drink Coca-Cola in a glass bottle always tasted different than Coca-Cola in a can.
Everybody thinks that. I feel like that's a unanimous thought process for most people without having anything to do with health, just taste.
Yeah, for sure.
On to the next, less of a trending topic and more of an observation. I'm a golfer. I talk about golf a lot on the podcast. And there was a point during COVID where the golf courses were crazy because it was an outdoor sport that they were allowing people to do. So people, if you were in areas that were especially highly restricted to do anything and you had a golf course open, you got to get outside and do something. It was like an event. And, you know, there was a point during COVID where it depended upon, again, what area you lived in. Parks could have been restricted. They said you can't go to certain parks. The beach was
closed in Miami,
The beach was closed in Miami, New Jersey, and other places during, you know, certain stints of COVID. And obviously this was all state specific, so it opened up at different times. But during those times, everyone was clamoring to get outside. And they were being sometimes argumentative. There were people who were like fighting with the cops and the police and the park rangers saying like, no, I need to get outside. This is what I need to do. But now that there's no restrictions, I feel like there's a lot less people outside. It's all calmed down. People are back to just watching Netflix on the couch. Do you think that this was just kind of like the natural push of people to say like, you can't tell me what to do, and we really rather prefer to watch Netflix than to be outside?
I think it's both. So I think when someone tells you not to do something, you're more inclined to do it, right? And I think that's even on a subconscious level. So I had a professor in college. I can't remember if it was like a marketing or psychology class. Anyway, he came in the room. He wrote the red on the board and said, "Think of a color, can't be red." And immediately it's going to be red, right? Subconsciously, that's what you're going to do. So I think that's part of it. When someone tells you you can't do something, there's an urge to do more of it. But I think it's also location specific, right? So I'm in Miami. It is, 70 plus degrees, 10, 11 months out of the year. So people are outside a lot. I see it a lot. I wonder if it's seasonal specific where you are. But I can say for myself, there was definitely a change pre and post COVID. So pre-COVID, I was indoorsy. I like having meals on balconies or on terraces, but that's it. I'm not into camping. I'm not into being outside. And then, I had lived in Miami Beach for years at that point, and I would probably go to the beach once a quarter, right? I just wasn't interested. I was only a couple of blocks from the beach. So now post COVID, I yearn to be outside. Like my body craves it. And even when it's raining, I'm like, I'm going to go for a jog. I just want to be outdoors. So I think it's probably person dependent, but I think there probably has a lot to do with that subconscious mindset of you can't go outside. Well, now I really want to be outside.
Yeah, I also think I'm sure it's geographic dependent, and part of my view is skewed because during the height of COVID, I was in Oklahoma City, and I lived in the city, like the downtown city. Yes, it's Oklahoma, but it's, because you're in the heart of the city, there's a different sort of people there. There's people who are getting out more, who are doing things, who want to be out. There's a reason why they live in the city. We can walk to shops and walk to restaurants. And
they're not used to just being at home all day. Yeah, they're used to constantly being out.
Now I'm more in a kind of a rural area in Texas where that's not the case, right? People's idea of getting outside is opening up their garage, and they have a bar in their garage and they're watching the Cowboys game on a recliner with the garage open, right? Yeah. So nobody walks here, and it's just not outdoorsy. And part of the reason is sometimes it's just temperature, weather dependent. It's like you have all the extremes. For 6 months a year, it's over 100 degrees, and then it's below 40 for 2 months. So you got 4 months where you can be outside. The rest of the year, it's too hot or too cold.
Yeah.
So as opposed to you being in, South Beach, you can be outside for probably 10 months of the 12 months and really have it be enjoyable, if not the full year. So I do think I'm sure it has something to do with that. But for me, I felt like there was such a big push for people to get outside in a good way. It seemed like people were saying like, hey, I care about my body. I want to be healthy. You're telling me to, you're telling me to take these vaccines, and I want to go outside. I want to be healthy. And then, you turn around. It's like everyone's just back to, Netflix and McDonald's, and they forgot that, hey, we still need to, be outside and thinking about our bodies, not just because we want to be defiant, but because, these things matter for our health.
Because we actually care. How would you say you've changed? Like, did you become more outdoorsy post-COVID? Did you go back to the way you were before? Is it different because now you're in Texas?
Yeah, I'd like to say, unfortunately, I've become more comfortable being indoors. I have to force myself to be outdoors because of the fact that COVID forced us indoors, that you almost get comfortable with that. I don't prefer it by any means, but I do find myself having to say, oh no, you need to get a 30-minute walk in today. You have not been outside at all.
Yeah.
Whereas in COVID, that was just a normal thing. But I, like you, am not outdoorsy in the word that people will typically use, where I want to go camping or go on a hike in the wilderness. I'm deathly afraid of any animal that's faster than me, which is basically every animal. So that's not my version of outdoorsy. My version of outdoorsy is going to whatever the local downtown is and walking around and window shopping and going in and getting a bite to eat somewhere at a new restaurant. That's my version of being outdoors. So I don't think it's changed me unfortunately in a positive way. I think if there is a positive, it's that I do recognize that, working from home now, in COVID, we have to remember that we need to get outside. We need to get some sun. We need to get some fresh air, as our grandmother used to say. Go get some fresh air and just walk around. It can be completely aimlessly. Sometimes you could have headphones. Sometimes you could do it without it. But just get outside.
Yeah, she was on to something. So speaking of hikes, I went hiking for the first time this summer. We went to a little town in Switzerland called Zermatt. And similar to you, I'm like terrified of animals. Like I'm like petrified of bears. Like the idea of being chased by a bear, I've seen some YouTube videos. It's just like horrific, right? That's my worst nightmare. But if you want to get into hiking, you have to go to places that are above the tree line, and then you avoid those animals. So like the place where we hiked in Zermatt, we were in the mountains, we were in the Alps. And so at least the guide told me this. Maybe he was just like trying to calm me, but he's like, don't worry about anything. We're above the tree line. So there's like no animals up here. And we didn't see any animals. There were just birds. So consider it.
It's interesting. Maybe this is a whole nother conversation, but like sort of mixing exercise with leisure and, how people do that and why they do that. And like what, so you can consider hiking in a sense, mixing exercise with leisure, right? That's part of the reason people do it. So for me, like yesterday, I just grabbed my basketball, went outside. It was 75 degrees and sunny. And I just like played basketball by myself, but was like running sprints on the court, running full court, doing stuff in outside basketball. And to me, that's my kind of leisure mixed with, fun and activity, right? Where I'm leisure mixed with exercise when I'm combining both of those things. For me, I guess I just don't see hiking as that. I wouldn't do it specifically for exercise. I would do it because like I'm in a destination and I wanted to do the thing that everyone does when they're in this destination as a leisure activity, but I don't think I would enjoy it as a combination leisure and exercise. Maybe also because I feel like
it would be strenuous enough.
No, I feel like it's too long. I can't fathom like giving even 2 hours of my day to that sort of exercise. Like I can be in and out of the gym with a good workout in under an hour. I can go run around and play basketball.
It's not just exercise, it's leisure, because you get to like look around and see the view and chat and what do the Japanese call it? Forest bathing. You're like taking in nature.
Yeah, well, when does leisure lead to anxiety because you're having too much leisure and you're worried about all the other things you're not getting done? I guess that's the question.
I get it. No, you have to be on vacation. It has to be the right combination of elements. But I was never a hiker, I would say, until this summer. And then after that trip, I was like, oh my gosh, this is really fun. We should do this. Yeah,
I have a friend who flies around the country now and does large hikes. So, yeah. Okay, I'll let you introduce the next topic.
Okay, next topic is the no thank you bite. So we both have 2 young toddlers, and this came up because we sort of disagree on how to approach mealtime. So Steve, you have the perspective that if you put something in front of your daughter, Mackenzie, you're going to ask her to at least take 1 bite and then say no thank you. And I said, I don't believe in that. So do you want to give me your perspective first? Yeah,
I will say as a caveat here, if she says no, I don't hold her down and shove the food down her throat. If she says no, that's fine. Maybe I'll ask one more time, and maybe I'll take a bite of it and see if she'll take a bite of it. It's not a must. But if I'm making dinner, let's say last night we had like Wagyu ground beef with broccoli and rice. And she doesn't like when things are all together, so I just separate hers. So she had beef in one thing, she had broccoli in the other, and yellow rice in the other, where Kayla and I will mix ours together in a bowl. And she ended up trying everything. But if she had not tried everything, I might have just said, can you take a no thank you broccoli bite? And if you don't like it, you can just put it to the side. And for me, it's a little bit to do with just parenting and me not wanting her to be able to say no when I ask her something that's really simple. Forget about it being anything to do with food. Maybe it's like
put your shoes on. Yeah. Anything.
Yeah. It could be anything. Hey, can you try whatever the thing is? Can you try this for me? Because I'm the adult and I would never ask you to do something that I believe could harm you. You might like it, you might not, and it's fine. I get why it could help or aid in some kind of bad nutrition habits down the road. And I'm willing to change that. Like I said, I'm not like, it's not like I believe this is the only way and everyone should do this. It's just something that I've tried out. And I feel like so far with my kid, it hasn't caused any problems and it hasn't hurt the process of her being less picky.
For sure. And I think to your point, it depends on the child, right? I think you have to parent to your child. And if you have multiple kids, maybe you're even parenting them in different ways. So all that to say, we have two very different 2-year-olds. And it's funny because as more of an uptight dietitian, my daughter Aurelia refuses to eat most of the things I put in front of her, right? So it's been very challenging for me. But as a dietitian, and I want to preface this by saying I'm not a pediatric dietitian. I trained under a pediatric dietitian. I decided not to go that route because it seems like it's more psychology than it is actual, the biology of what's in our food. But the job of the parent is to offer food to our children, not to dictate how much or what they eat, right? So if you give her one of the little baby plates with the Wagyu beef and the rice and broccoli, and she decides to only eat the rice, that's a win, right? We shouldn't be dictating specifically what they eat because, and this is for a number of reasons. One is you want them to sort of trust their instincts and trust their body. And if they think something is weird, you want them to go with that, right? So even though it seems a little outrageous, and as parents, we don't have a lot of time, textbook is you can put food in front of your toddler up to 15 times. And if they don't eat it after the 15th time, well, then, maybe you can try a different strategy. But eating is only one piece of the pie, right? So they're also developing their sensory skills. So if she plays with the Wagyu beef, that's good. If she picks it up and she smells it, if she puts it between her fingers, sometimes Aurelia will pick something up and touch it to her tongue and then still not decide to eat it. But it's a win if they're getting more accustomed to the food, right? They're developing their sensory skills. They're getting more used to that food. The other issue is, and it seems like with Mackenzie, she's not super stressed out. She's, you're not domineering or overbearing in a way. You ask her to take the bite. But I think for other kids, Aurelia gets stressed out easily if I were to ask her to try something. So we don't want kids to associate mealtime with a stressful situation. And then also, just from a biological perspective, the reason why for thousands of years people have sat down to eat, the reason why in many cultures we take a breath and say a prayer before we eat is because we need to be relaxed in order to digest properly. So when we engage the parasympathetic nervous system, that's going to activate our gallbladder, our stomach, our intestines, and that's going to allow us to digest properly. If we are stressed, the blood vessels in our gut constrict, and you're not going to absorb nutrients in the same way. And so, if it gets into a situation where the toddler is stressed because you're asking them to take a bite, then anything she eats after that isn't going to be absorbed properly. So, again, you have to parent to your child, but that's my approach.
That's all well said. I think my one kind of hiccup in that is that I don't believe toddlers are rational. So, letting them...
They're not. Confirmed, they are not.
Well, but that leads to them letting them dictate their instincts. I think their instincts are wrong. Their instinct, Mackenzie's instinct is all most toddlers' instincts are suicidal. They're trying to jump off couches head first. So there is a part of me that says I do need to also guide you a little bit because your instincts are not always right. In a sense, one day blueberries are your favorite food, the next day you're throwing them across the room. So I guess that is my one kind of pushback is that. It's not, I think there's a wrong way to do it. I would never force her to do it. I just ask once or twice. If she doesn't want to do it, that's fine. And I'm lucky enough because my kid is such an easy eater. She eats everything. It doesn't really matter. I haven't been forced into those situations. And maybe if I saw it from the other side, I would think much different. I would have to approach this much differently, right? So I'm only seeing it from one side. But I do think they need to be handheld a little bit in the food process because they're toddlers. They need to be handheld in every process.
For sure. And so my take on that is you offering what you decide to offer is guiding them, right? So you're only going to put healthy food on their plate. You're not going to hopefully be putting candy or Cheerios or whatever, right? You're putting real food on their plate, protein and healthy carbs and healthy fats. And so that's how you guide them. So, they're learning sort of to trust their own. Agreed, they're not rational, but they're learning to trust their own intuition. And I do think there is something to they know intuitively when they're hungry and when they're full, and you want them to be able to tune into that, and not get that from outside sources, right? So what you're saying is different than the clean your plate, or you have to eat dinner, no dessert. It's different. I think those are extreme approaches. So you find in the middle what works for you and your child. Mackenzie doesn't seem stressed when she eats. I bend over backwards to really accommodate Aurelia, and she still gets stressed sometimes. So you have to parent to your child.
Yeah. It's for me, like I said, I probably would use a different approach if I had to use a different approach. And I do think it's interesting to look at all of because there's so much literature on this now, where people tell you actually the best thing to do is to put all the food in front of them, including their dessert, and just let them decide. Don't make dessert special. So you just put their little brownie down next to whatever else, and put their juice box down. If they want to have it, they want to have it. And I feel like it's, again, we have all these people who are pushing against whatever the old narrative was, instead of just using again like a rational, reasonable, common sense approach. The common sense approach is put healthy food in front of your kids. Hope that they eat that. If they don't eat all of it, hope that they eat some of it, and make it not a big deal. Don't make mealtime such a big deal where you are either extremely excited or extremely upset if something doesn't go right, because that's going to make the situation more difficult.
Yeah. The idea behind the not using dessert, not serving that last, is you don't want to use food as a reward, right? So the idea is eat your dinner and then you can have ice cream, or then you can have the brownie. Then they're thinking of the brownie as a reward, right? Then later on in life, maybe that leads to binge eating disorder, right? Or obesity, or being overweight. But I think that maybe has a place if you are staying away completely from any packaged or processed food. So if dessert is blueberries, I'm okay with that. Sometimes I do that. I put blueberries and chicken and squash on her plate. And if she wants to eat the blueberries, okay, that was technically dessert, but that's what you want to start with, that's fine. But brownies shouldn't be incorporated into it, right? Nothing with refined sugar should be given to children under 2 anyway. But I think that mindset only works if you're serving whole, fresh food, nothing packaged or processed or that has added sugar.
Yeah. Well, also, just to be completely transparent and honest here, this is kind of what my wife and I try to do, but when my wife's not home, I give my daughter whatever she wants. I've never said no to Mackenzie in her entire life. I don't know if I'll ever be able to say no. So she wants the yogurt pouch, she gets the yogurt pouch. That's pretty much how our relationship dynamic goes.
Yeah, it's you can have a parenting theory and a style, and then all bets are off when you're in the kitchen with them.
Yeah, you just keep rationalizing. You're not a big deal. It's yogurt. It's got some protein in it. Yeah,
it's calcium, probiotics.
Tomorrow,
yeah.
We'll start over tomorrow. We'll instill better eating habits tomorrow. That's what I keep telling myself.
For sure. It's every day's a challenge. So you just have to survive sometimes with toddlers.
So you have these friends, and actually you probably are these friends in a sense, but you certainly have these friends, and I have these friends, and people who go to Europe and they tell you about their vacation. They go, oh, I was in Italy and then I was in Greece. And I said, what'd you do? Oh, well, we drank wine all day long. What'd you eat? Oh, we ate whatever we wanted. Did you work out? No. Oh, okay. Well, you must have come back heavier, right? No, I somehow lost 6 pounds and I feel great. It's like, well, how did that happen? And this is not like a one-off story. This is everybody who comes back from Europe tells you the same spiel. Is it all the walking that people are doing? Is it the fact that their foods have less preservatives? Is it the fact that their wine has less preservatives? Is it the fact that they're really happy and that it adds to maybe your overall health and wellness because you're so happy on this trip? Is it a combination of all these things? How do you unpack all of what I just said?
For sure. I think it's all of that. I will start by saying, yeah, European cities are more walkable just in general, right? It's easy to do that. I've used my Fitbit when we've gone to Rome or Paris or, even London, and it's easy to get 15,000 steps in a day, where here I have to really try to get that many steps. It's normal, it's easy, it's more pedestrian friendly. So I think that's one factor. The other factor is for people who say they have a gluten allergy or a gluten intolerance, like I do, The dough there is different. So Europeans bake their dough in a more traditional way, and they allow it to rise overnight. And because of that, the enzymes actually eat up the gluten. So their bread naturally has less gluten in it. So their pasta, their bread, all of that, their pizza is going to have less gluten in it naturally. And so that's why people who have a gluten allergy sometimes are okay eating bread and bread products in Europe. The other issue is our agriculture is not in good shape here. So we use a ton of pesticides. I printed statistics because I wanted to read through them, but in 2021, the Environmental Working Group found that 95% of oat products, 95% are contaminated with glyphosate. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency found that 80 to 90% of wheat products, pizza, crackers, pasta, this is in Canada, but still are contaminated with glyphosate. So a lot of the really toxic pesticides are banned in Europe. So they're not using them. And I think that's what factors into how people feel when they're eating foods in the States that would traditionally make them feel pretty crappy. And I think similarly with wine, right? They're not using the same pesticides. It's more common to have organic farming processes there. Even if it's not officially certified or labeled organic, they farm in a more organic way with less pesticides. So it's noticeable.
Yeah, I think the sulfites too. Typically, you don't see the sulfites in their wine.
Yeah, especially French wines, very low in sulfites.
Yeah, especially to the extent that they're going to be here. And I do think the outdoor component might be understated. I think typically the average person, especially if you're somebody who works 9 to 5, you're an accountant, you're indoors all day long, you're sitting down, and you don't get much sun. You certainly don't get many steps.
Even before you go to work, right? Think about transportation. You're either sitting on your car or sitting on the train. You go to work, you sit all day, right? You've lived that life.
I tell the story all the time. You're in bed, you're lying flat for 8 hours. Then you wake up and then you go sit down at your kitchen nook and you eat your bagel sandwich or your bowl of cereal. Then you go sit in your car, you drive 45 minutes to work. Then you go sit in your desk for 7 hours and you go sit in your car, drive back home. You go sit down, you eat dinner at the table. Then you sit down on the couch, watch 2 hours of Netflix, and then you go lay back in the bed for 8 hours. So
it's crazy. And then people are like, I heard the number one complaint now is back pain. That's why, because we're not standing, because we're sitting or laying all day.
Yeah, what happens is, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you everyone's issue, but a lot of people's issues is that, your hip flexors and those muscles on the front of your body start to shorten because they don't need to lengthen because you're always sitting. So those muscles shorten and they go in, and then that causes sort of a pelvic tilt process that pulls down on your pelvis, and we get a pelvic tilt, and that puts undue stress on your back and your hip complex, and so on and so forth. Not to mention just overall weakness, right? A lot of people think, this is a whole other conversation, that you can't be tight and weak. They think tight is associated with strength. So if I work out too much, then my muscles are tight. And no, that's not how it works. Like, you can be tight and weak. In fact, most people are tight and weak in the front of their body, in their hip complex area. But so you see, like, we're going back to what we were saying before. You have an accountant, and he's usually sitting down all day, and now he goes out and he's in Greece. And he's outside for 6 hours. He's getting sun.
Right, strolling,
he's walking,
around.
He's getting good air. He's happy, he or she. Like, this is a big component of why vacations, people come back a lot of times lighter too, is not only the exercise, but the happiness and the outdoors aspect that they don't get in their normal lives when their cortisol levels are high and they're stressed out. And they're in traffic and they're beeping at people and they're cursing at people, and they get home and their toddler shit their pants and the wife burnt the dinner and whatever else is going on, and they're running around crazy. It's like, okay, now you get away from this and then add in all of those other factors we just said. That's a recipe for your body to be functioning at a higher level.
Yeah, and I think people really discount walking, and I am such a proponent of going for a walk. I walk for at least 2 miles every day, rain or shine. It has changed my life. Maybe not so much physically, but mentally, just to have that time to myself, to reflect. But physically, it does really help. So if you have eaten a big meal and your blood sugar starts to spike, the best thing you can do is go for a walk. So you go for a walk about 20 minutes after you eat. It'll help stabilize your blood sugar. It'll help balance it out. And that's why people gain weight. Your blood sugar goes up, and then your insulin goes up. And insulin is like Miracle-Gro for fat cells, right? So insulin is what's causing our cells to retain those glucose molecules. So people, don't give walking enough credit, but I think that has a lot to do with it.
Little bit straying off topic somewhat here, a branch off of this tree. I think it's a really good relationship builder too. Kayla and I always take walks together, and you're going to be talking about things that are important because that's inevitably what happens, right? You're like, okay, hey, we're on this walk. We have to talk about the trip that's coming up next Saturday. We have to talk about, redoing our whatever life insurance policy, whatever the things are that are on your mind, because there's nothing else to do. You're not going to be looking at your phone. The TV is not around. Your laptops aren't around. So I also think it really helps to have good conversations, whether that's with yourself, like you said, whether that is you almost in a meditating type way, being able to walk through all the important things that you have on maybe it's your short-term agenda or your long-term agenda that you want to deal with. But if you're with your partner, it's even a better way to have these conversations and get away from the phone and get away from the laptop, because there's all these like memes. It's funny on Instagram and these videos now. It's like, you're sitting on one couch, your significant other sitting on the other couch, and you're both like sending each other reels. So it's like there's like the proper conversations are not being had to kind of move families forward. And I think the walking really kind of helps push that forward.
For sure. And you mentioned cortisol before, and I think, exercise obviously can lower cortisol levels, but those relationships, right? Positive feelings and reducing stress really helps too. And I think a lot of people don't give cortisol enough credit either, right? They think I'm not in good shape because of diet and exercise. And that could be true, but stress plays a huge role. That's mainly what is causing people to retain fat in their midsection, right? The belly fat is from cortisol. So if you can go on vacation and you can take time away and you can really lower your stress levels, or if you can, be at home and go for a walk with a spouse or with a partner, I think that really helps too with the cortisol and balancing your stress hormones and eventually, helping you maintain your weight.
It's almost as good as a somatic exercise healer, almost. We'll end on that note. This has been an episode of the TrulyFit Podcast. Beck, thanks for joining in.
Yeah, thanks so much.